This particular installment of Star Trek TNG has a lot going on and many different points of interest for me to cover during this review, which means, unfortunately, I will not have time to give you my opinion on the question everybody argues about regarding Starship Mine. Is it a Christmas episode? This is a review of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, Starship Mine. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know Starship Who's, be warned. Spoilers beyond this point. The Enterprise pulls into a starbase for some routine maintenance, which turns out to be, I hope you're sitting down, anything but routine. That routine maintenance is a thing called a baryon sweep, and to get it, the Enterprise has docked at the Remler Array in orbit above the planet Arcaria. Because the baryon sweep is lethal to living organisms, the ship is being completely evacuated ahead of the procedure, which I find to be a reasonable precaution, if a bit excessive. I mean, there are 1,000 people aboard the Enterprise. Do they really need them all? Captain Picard deals with some last-minute concerns from Counselor Troy and Dr. Crusher on his way to a turbolift, where he shares a car with Data on the way to the bridge, and learns that Data has randomly decided to begin practicing small talk. Surfing on a ship with Data must be like living with a child who's just a little too precocious and creative, you know? To the point that it tips over from endearing to annoying. Like, they're really smart and imaginative, which is great, but then they up and decide they're gonna walk around blindfolded for an entire week, and you just have to sort of put up with it. That's Data. This one time when I was a kid, I pretended that I lived on a space station. My town and my school and all the places where I'd go that were outside, they were part of a gigantic biosphere inside the space station. My bedroom closet was a spaceship that I'd use to visit other planets. This went on for months. I'm lucky my parents didn't set me out with the garbage. Anyway, Picard says to Data, hey, if you want to practice small talk, you should corner Commander Hutchinson during the reception they're having for us at Arcaria Base. He's the best at small talk, which makes him the worst. Picard meets Geordi and Worf as soon as he steps off the elevator and deals with a few more problems related to the upcoming sweep. Then, right when Picard is about to head to the ready room to take a call from the planet, Worf sneaks in with, Captain, may I be excused from the reception? And Picard's like, yes, you may. I wish I could be excused as well, but apparently this customary social function by the people who are performing our spaceship's oil change is inescapable. Except to you, Mr. Worf. You go. Live. Geordi jumps in like, can I be excused too? And Picard's like, dude, what did I just say? The reception is inescapable except to Worf. Request denied. Why are you making me be a dick? Why are you putting me in this position? Everyone clears out and Picard prepares to leave too, and he has a nice private moment before he goes. The bridge is empty. It's probably the only time he's ever seen it like this, just him and his ship. Then the maintenance crew from the array comes in and gets to work preparing for the sweep, and Picard gets the hell out of there. Down at Arcaria Base, the reception for the command crew is underway, and small talk master Commander Hutchinson, Hutch as he asks to be called, is in fine form, attaching himself first to Beverly before moving on to Riker and then Captain Picard. Data, who has been studying Hutch from across the room, approaches Riker and Crusher in full small talk mode and strikes up a pointless conversation about the relationship between room temperature and body temperature. Picard tries to extract himself from the insipid clutches of Hutch by sacrificing Geordi and Troy, then sees a possible way out when Hutch begins talking about the nearby nesting grounds of some native birds. He says if the weather was nicer, we could take horses out to watch those birds getting freaky. And suddenly, Johnny gets the feeling that he can escape from Hutch on horses. Realizing he should have just enough time before the sweep starts, Picard excuses himself to return to the Enterprise so he can get his saddle. The others think it's a bit weird that the captain has a saddle, but he's like, serious riders have their own saddles. It's totally normal, so maybe next time keep your mouth shut about shit you know nothing about! And he's gone. Picard changes into some more appropriate riding clothes, collects his saddle, and is on his way off the ship once again when he notices something strange. A panel has been removed from the wall and some wires have been cut. As he stops to investigate, this guy walks in like, hey, what are you doing? And Picard's like, I don't know, what are you doing? You're with the crew from the array, right? I thought you all were supposed to be off the ship by now. The other guy's like, well, I thought you were supposed to be off the ship by now. And Picard's like, well, I wanted to get my saddle. And the other guy's like, you have a saddle? And Picard's like, yeah, you want to see? Picard and the other guy have a brief scrap, which Picard wins by applying what looks like a Vulcan neck pinch to the guy. Would that be meta-irony, given who's playing this character? This supposed maintenance crew is clearly up to something shady, and Picard's got to get off the Enterprise and inform the others. He races to the transporter room, but the ship's main power shuts off, as scheduled for the baryon sweep, right as he's set to beam out. Looks like Picard's stuck on the Enterprise with the bad guys. Meanwhile, at Arcaria Base, Riker successfully redirects Hutch over to Data so they can small talk each other to death. Back on the Enterprise, Picard tries to get some answers out of the phony maintenance guy who isn't Tuvok, but the guy's not talking, so Picard gives him a shot of knockout juice, grabs his communicator, his laser welder, and his thing that you put on things to open the doors while the power is off, and gets moving. He doesn't get very far, though. This lady, also part of the gang, catches him and marches him down to engineering, where the rest of the gang is working, led by this lady, Kelsey. It turns out they're crooks, and they're trying to pull off a heist while the Enterprise is out of commission for the sweep. They're trying to steal an explosive byproduct of the Enterprise's engines. None of them recognize Picard, so he tells them that he's Mott, the ship's barber, and Kelsey sits him down against the wall and has one of her gang guard him. Back down at the base, Geordi notices something funny underneath one of the tables. Orton, the station administrator, tells Geordi to forget about it. It's nothing, but Geordi won't let it go, so Orton and his associate are like, fuck it, and pull ray guns. That's what Geordi's visor detected under the table, the hidden ray guns, and take the group hostage. The other guy shoots Geordi, knocking him down. Orton turns and shoots Hutch, killing him instantly. It's an RKO, that's ray gun kill-off, out of nowhere from Orton. And goddamn, I bet that one felt good. I'm guessing the only reason Orton signed on to be a part of this scheme was so he'd have an opportunity to murder Hutch. Good for you, Orton. Geordi is still alive, but badly hurt. Crusher tends to him and tells Riker that Geordi will probably be okay, but Riker suggests that they tell Orton that Geordi is dying. That way, maybe Orton will let them have a medical kit, and they can use the medical kit to create some kind of weapon. Data suggests doing a technobabble thing to Geordi's visor, which will cause it to emit a hypersonic pulse that will knock out everyone in the room but Data. Riker's like, good idea, get to work. But we don't actually have the medical kit yet. Don't worry, we're going to cut away, and when we cut back to this, you'll have it and already be working on the visor. Great plan, boss! On the Enterprise, Picard manages to escape from the gang by surreptitiously blasting a power outlet with his laser torch, causing an overload that distracts everyone long enough for him to knock his guard over and make a run for it. The guard gets up and chases after him. Picard crawls through a maintenance tube until he runs into the baryon sweep, which has begun and is inching its way from the back of the ship to the front. We cut to the guard crawling after Picard. He reaches the same point Picard was just at, finds Picard's discarded jacket, picks up the jacket to find a hole Picard cut for himself to get out of the tube, then looks up just in time to see the baryon sweep come through the hatch in front of him, and he's dead. And people say movie Picard was so different from TV Picard. Sure, he's Mr. Shakespeare in diplomacy most of the time, but fuck with his ship, and he might not kill you directly, but he will most definitely leave you in a probably gonna get killed position. Picard heads to Worf's quarters to gear up with some weapons to fight Kelsey's gang. Best place, since Worf hangs all his weapons up on the wall the way middle-class white women do those live, laugh, love signs. While Picard helps himself to a crossbow and some arrows, he overhears Kelsey talking on the communicator to the rest of the team about how they're gonna have to grab the trilithium, that highly dangerous engine byproduct they're stealing, and make a run to 10 forward, since that's the last place the baryon sweep will hit. Picard jumps on the call like, hey, don't be a doofus. Trilithium is extremely unstable. If you try to move it, you'll set off an explosion that'll destroy the entire ship and kill everyone. Kelsey comes back like, yeah, well, we're doing it. Down at Arcaria Base, Crusher, Troy, Riker, and Data are plotting their next move against Orton, trying to be sneaky but calling their spots as loudly as John Cena. Fortunately, Orton doesn't notice. Crusher needs a distraction so she can finish reconfiguring Geordi's visor. Riker's like, got it, leave this to me. And he walks up to Orton and punches him in the face. Distraction accomplished. Picard and Kelsey's gang engage in a game of cat and mouse across the Enterprise. Kelsey and her team trying to get to 10 forward to stay ahead of the sweep. Picard using his knowledge of the ship to anticipate their movements and block them, like this bit where he cuts the rungs of the ladder they're climbing to get to a higher deck, or this bit where he ambushes one of Kelsey's gang, this green-haired guy who kinda looks like the Star Trek version of the Joker. Picard shoots him in the leg with a poison-tipped arrow from Worf's crossbow, and the guy goes down like, "What a tragic fate to befall the clown prince of crime!" But then this lady catches Picard again and marches him off to meet Kelsey and the other guy, Neil, who is carrying the highly explosive trilithium resin in an old milk jug with a gizmo attached to it to keep the trilithium from exploding. Kelsey and Neil are about to crawl into another access tube when Kelsey's like, "Hey, Neil, give me the milk jug." And he gives her the milk jug. And she says, "Is there anything special I need to do to get the trilithium out of the milk jug?" And Neil says, "No, not really, just pour it out." And Kelsey's like, "Great, thanks, I'll kill you now." Just like the Joker's gang at the beginning of The Dark Knight. Oh shit, and that guy Picard shot who looks like the Joker. Do you think this episode was the inspiration for The Dark Knight? Like, Jonathan and Christopher Nolan were hanging out watching TNG back in 1993, and they turned to each other, and Jonathan said, "If we ever make a Batman movie, let's totally lift shit from this random Star Trek episode." And Christopher was like, "Yeah, and it'll be the best Batman movie ever, and then 15 years later, I'll make a 3-hour biopic about Robert Oppenheimer that will gross $1 billion. And then their father walked in and said, "Stop doing so many drugs, Christopher and Jonathan Nolan. You're not making any sense." Anyway, Picard and the other lady meet up with Kelsey and they head to 10 Forward. Down at the base, Crusher has finished modifying Geordi's visor and she pushes a button to send out the hypersonic pulse, which knocks out everyone but Data just as predicted. Data picks up the ray guns and goes over to a control panel to see if he can do anything to stop a mysterious ship that's just entered the system. As they're about to enter 10 Forward, Picard reveals to Kelsey that he's not the barber, he's the captain of the ship. He offers himself as a hostage if Kelsey will leave the trilithium behind. Kelsey says, "But I don't need a hostage. I'm not a terrorist. I don't have an agenda. I'm a thief. And I'm going to sell that trilithium. That's all I'm in this for, the money." They walk through the door to 10 Forward, and Kelsey and the other lady step on a flash powder trap that Picard set off ahead of time. Taking advantage of the distraction, Picard tackles Kelsey, and they begin to fight as the baryon sweep comes through the wall. They wrestle on the floor for a minute, then Kelsey gets up and receives a call from the ship that's come to pick her up. She offers Picard a triumphantly sarcastic apology and beams away with the milk jug full of trilithium. Picard gets on the communicator and calls the base, pleading with them to deactivate the baryon sweep. The sweep deactivates moments before it reaches Picard, and then Data calls up like, "Hey, Captain, you okay? Do you know anything about that ship that just arrived?" And Picard reveals that during his fight with Kelsey, he snagged the anti-explosive gizmo from the milk jug. He says to Data, "I know they won't get very far," and right on cue, the ship explodes. You see what I'm talking about? Between the baryon sweep and the escape ship blowing up, every single one of Kelsey's gang that tried to rip off the Enterprise died. That's what happens when you fuck with Picard's ship, in the movies and on TV. There's a quick wrap-up scene with everyone in sickbay. Picard has dispatched a search party, but so far no luck. Then Worf enters with the very thing they were all searching for, Picard's saddle. Worf's like, "You keep a saddle on the ship?" And the others are like, duh, Worf."
Anyone who is an experienced rider naturally has his own saddle. It's perfectly normal.
Actually came in handy. I only wish I'd had the opportunity to use it on a horse.
Of course.
They end a fairly straightforward, serious, action-based episode on a corny-ass joke in classic Star Trek fashion. I love this episode. It's one of the most rewatchable episodes of TNG for me, and that's saying something because TNG is an extremely rewatchable series. As is very often the case with good Star Trek episodes, especially during the TNG era, Starship Mine succeeds because it starts with a basic, familiar premise and remixes it into something that's still familiar, but just new enough to be interesting. The unofficial tagline for this episode is "Die Hard on a Starship," and that description does capture a lot of the appeal. Like John McClane, Picard finds himself outnumbered and outgunned by his enemies and relies on various means of subterfuge and surprise to evade and neutralize them. Like Hans Gruber's gang, Kelsey and her team appear to be terrorists, but it turns out they're just trying to steal some shit. Most of the other characters are held hostage at what was supposed to be a party. The hero and the main villain end up talking to each other over a radio the hero takes from one of the lesser villains. And when it's all over, every last goddamn one of the gang who took over the building or the ship are dead, dead, dead. Starship Mine refines the Die Hard formula a bit. It simplifies things. Necessarily, Die Hard is nearly 3 times as long as an episode of TNG. It removes the rescuing the hostages element. Picard isn't even aware that his crew has been captured by associates of Kelsey at Arcaria base. His only concern is stopping the theft of the trilithium and protecting the Enterprise. Accordingly, the hostages in Starship Mine are a bit more empowered than the equivalent group in Die Hard. Nothing Riker, Crusher, Troy, Data, or Geordi do makes any difference to what Picard's doing in the main plot, but at least they are able to free themselves from the hostage situation. And presumably it's Data who deactivates the Barian sweep at the end, saving Picard, so I guess they do make a little bit of a difference. Speaking of the Barian sweep, that's another tweak to the Die Hard formula that works very well in this episode's favor. The presence of the sweep adds a constant and constantly escalating threat to both sides, Picard and Kelsey's gang. They each have their own agendas, but they also have to remember to stay ahead of the sweep and keep in mind that if they don't find a way off the ship before the sweep reaches the front end, they're history. The Barian sweep serves 2 important functions. First, it provides a convenient excuse to knock off some of Kelsey's gang along the way and even the odds for Picard. Second, it creates tension that builds throughout the episode. There's not only a ticking clock, there's a continuously shrinking safe zone for the hero and the villains. Time and space are running out. And that makes for a very exciting scenario. Kelsey, played by Marie Marshall, is an effective antagonist, tough and no-nonsense, but also a bit reckless. She responds to a warning from Neil about how volatile the trilithium is by yanking the milk jug full of it away and scolding Neil for being so careful. Yes, she wants the job to succeed. Yes, she wants to sell this stuff and get paid. But hey, if everything blows up, everything blows up, you know? As the French say, that's life. The rest of Kelsey's gang are pretty nondescript. Tim Russ gets a lot of notice in retrospect because he goes on to play Tuvok on Star Trek Voyager, but here he's just a guy. Down at Arcaria base, Orton and the other guy are the same. They're present, they play their parts in the plot, but they don't really pop as characters. The only one of Kelsey's crew who shows a little personality is poor, nervous Neil, played by Tom Nibley. In stories like this one, it seems like there's always a guy like Neil, a smart, sensible person with reasonable concerns about the job they're doing. Nibley makes enough of an impression to leave me wondering how Neil got himself mixed up with this bunch of crooks. The only other guest character who makes that much of an impression is Hutch, played to pestiferous perfection by David Spielberg. Hutch is the sort of character Lwaxana Troi tries and fails to be. Whenever I bring up how much I despise Lwaxana, some of her defenders, of which there are many, rush in to declare, but she's supposed to be annoying. To which I reply, yes, but I don't find her annoying in an entertaining way. I find her annoying in a way that makes me want to stop watching the show. Not the case with Hutch. He finds the sweet spot, which, for me, Lwaxana consistently misses. He's clearly and understandably annoying to the characters trapped in the story with him, but very funny to me, safe out here in the audience. Dig this incredible reaction shot from Jonathan Frakes when Riker overhears that Hutch has spotted him at the reception.
Oh, that must be Commander Riker. Excuse me.
Of course.
Pardon me.
Maybe the funniest moment in the whole episode. Hutch even gets a little arc, even though he's only present for a relatively brief interval. Well, I guess technically he's present right up until the end. He's just not doing very much for most of that time. He starts out as the annoyingly gregarious party host who everybody tries to avoid. Then he finds his soulmate in the similarly small-talk-obsessed Data. Then he gets killed because, in the story, it's what he deserves. Fuck him. In the story. Starship Mine is written by Morgan Grendel, who also wrote the original story and, with Peter Allen Fields, the teleplay for the episode The Inner Light the previous season. In addition to making the most of the premise and creating opportunities for Marie Marshall and Peter Spielberg to shine in their respective guest appearances, Grendel's script manages to plug most of the potential holes. Grendel accounts for Worf, having him beg off of the reception early on and punctuating it with a joke, having Geordi also attempt to beg off only to get rejected so that the plot contrivance goes down easier. Always a smart writing choice. The action with Picard and the criminals on the Enterprise is set up well enough so that I mostly buy it. There's some small amount of hand-waving necessary. Why couldn't Picard, as captain of the ship, simply tell the computer to delay shutting off the power instead of having to rush to a transporter room with seconds to spare? I have no idea, but it's no big deal because the plot pulls me along with it so that I do not care. And while the Enterprise-based action is pretty serious, there's the occasional moment of levity during the Arcaria scenes, even after the hostage situation begins, to lighten the mood when necessary. It's a well-paced, nicely balanced piece of work. The episode is directed by Cliff Bole, one of TNG's best hands. He directed over 24 TNG episodes, including both parts of The Best of Both Worlds, as well as 7 Deep Space Nine episodes and 10 Voyager episodes. Here, Bole and director of photography Jonathan West get to have a bit more fun than usual with the lighting on the Enterprise. After the power goes out, things get a lot darker on the ship than we typically see. Normally, the lighting on the Enterprise sets is even and flat. It makes shooting a 20-something episode a year TV series a lot easier because you don't have to fuss with new lighting setups for every scene, but it's not very interesting. A change of pace is always welcome. Here, Bole and West create a sort of Enterprise after hours look, with the ship's normally bright corridors now cast in shadow. It's a cool deviation from the norm. It's fun. That's what it is, and that's why I love watching it. Captain Picard playing action hero is fun. Riker and the rest of the crew planetside doing their hostage situation sitcom episode is fun. The running gag where everyone is confused about why Picard keeps a saddle on his spaceship is fun. And in hindsight, Worf asking for and receiving permission to be excused from most of the episode is fun, and one of the rare instances on TNG of Worf coming across as the smartest person on the show. It's fun for everyone but the dead. At least it was fun watching him die. And boy, oh boy, do they ever die hard on a starship. Those are my thoughts on Starship Mine. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Please join me next time as this Hijacked batch continues. The next episode I'll be reviewing is one from Season 2 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, an episode titled Invasive Procedures. See you next time for that. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.